she wants to expose her kid to that stuff, she can go right ahead and do it on her own time and her own dime, not on my taxpayer money, when my kid might be sitting right next to her kid reading a nice book.
Megyn Kelly of The Megyn Kelly Show is back, and she is here to rip a new one into MSNBC's Joy Reid, who wants to sit here and defend having adult books in school libraries. Megyn Kelly is not having any of it. Let's see what she has to say.
And the dildo. Okay. There's a reason we mentioned the D word, and that is it came up on Joy Reid's show when Moms for Liberty's Tiffany Justice, to her credit, went on with Joy Reid. The subject was all the evil book banning that they're doing in Florida, thanks in part to people like Ron DeSantis and people like Tiffany, who, through Moms for Liberty, is pushing to get these books not out of Florida, not out of libraries, not out of Amazon, not out of bookstores, but out of K through 12 school libraries. That's it. And it led to, in part, the following exchange. Listen to this.
What is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? That's my question to you.
As you are not an expert, in this book,
I don't have to be an expert to know that dildos aren't appropriate for public school. I mean, come on, let's get real.
This book is a full context story, as you said, of the author's experience. Right. What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story, why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means that they have either been raped by a family member.
What's your
child
proof of
feels
that?
Seen by this story.
You're now making assumptions about it.
No, but if a child has been raped, we should do a lot better than put a book on a library
Now you're literally
shelf.
creating a story behind a child that you don't know.
The whole thing is so frustrating. Joy Reid, whenever Tiffany scores a point, Joy Reid tries to interrupt her and shut her down. That's her method of arguing. But Tiffany was Eliana, seriously, like, what's your expertise to make the point that a book about strap-on dildos or pedophilia or anal rape by a family member doesn't belong in K through 12 libraries and schools?
Right. And you don't need expertise to know what's appropriate or not appropriate content for your children to have the stamp of approval of their schools by being in the school library. And the argument about banning books is such a red herring in that if parents proactively want their children exposed to these things, they're within their rights to purchase these books for their kids or to go get them from the public libraries. And to talk with their children about these things and to expose their children to these books. But to have them in the school library for perusal of children without the consent of their parents is not okay. And that is what the objection is to by many, many parents.
Absolutely correct. The left like to say, well, the right, they're banning books. They're banning books. And it's such a disingenuous argument because, as this lady here said, if you really want your children to read these books, they're not banned from it. You could buy them for your children and give it to them to read. Like, you could absolutely, you could absolutely do that. It would be like saying, oh, the right's trying to ban movies because, oh, some people want to be able to show, I don't know, Basic Instinct or Showgirls at schools, and the right says, oh, no, don't show those movies. And you're like, oh, well, you're trying to ban movies? It's like, no, if you want to show your children this content, you absolutely are able to. We just don't want it in schools.
There are tons of academic expert articles and books, Emily, about the damage done to children in being exposed to content like that too soon. And most of us are pretty vigilant, most good parents, pretty vigilant about making sure our children don't have access to that kind of thing. We put blocks on their phones if they have phones. We don't, whatever. You're making sure the family computer is in a room where the children, you can see the child, right? Like all the things. And the last thing you want to think is when you send them to school, that's when they're most dangerous. That's when they're most exposed to stories about anal rape and strap-on dildos. And that's another book. Like what? I don't know what Joy Reid is thinking. I don't want to know about Joy Reid's weird sexual predilections or what she thinks is okay content for minors. But it's not the same as what I think. And if she wants to expose her kid to that stuff, she can go right ahead and do it on her own time and her own dime, not on my taxpayer money, when my kid might be sitting right next to her kid reading a nice book about love, about bullies, about history, right? It's absurd to pretend it's a ban because you can't get it in your school library.
Absolutely correct. And like when Megyn Kelly says, it is about just trying to have as much control as a parent as possible. And if this is just available for your child at school where you can't really see, you're not really sure what they're reading, you can't really be there to make sure that they're exposed to the most appropriate content as much as possible. But when you're leaving the schools in charge of that stuff, that's not good. You do want to know what kind of content your child is soaking in. And with this whole school thing, it's hard to do that. And especially now that teachers also want to teach this stuff, it's not cool. It's the state wanting to parent the children. Do you guys agree or do you guys disagree? Leave a comment down below. Let's get back to this video.
But of course, Megyn, you're not an expert. I mean, it's just like her argument crumbled on her own show. I mean, it was incredible. Tiffany from Moms for Liberty did just an incredibly deft job at knocking everything down while not seeming at all to be unlikable. Like, she was sane, rational, reasoned. She didn't seem like a crazy extremist that wanted to ban, Harper Lee or anything like that. She did such a great job. And I think also that just speaks to the weakness of Joy Reid's argument that every time she brought up a book ban, Tiffany from Moms for Liberty was like, oh, okay, well, there are some websites that are banned. Are you saying that everybody who's banned different websites at public schools is a website banner? No, of course you're not. You don't allow porn websites to be accessible on these computers. It doesn't make you a censor or a website banner. It just makes you somebody who's exercising normal judgment about what's right for children. You don't need to be an expert to say that children should not be exposed to pornography. And when PEN America did their calculations about the most banned book in America, it's actually so funny that they proudly boasted it was genderqueer. And it's like, you just made the argument for your opponent perfectly. Most of these bans have been most of these bans have been targeting books. The illustrations in that book, I think a lot of parents have seen them by now because it has been a huge topic of conversation. They're outrageous. They're insane. There's no way the vast majority of parents want their kids to have access to that. And so PEN America, by acting like these books are such victims of censorship, just does the argument for everybody. The vast majority of these bans are targeting obviously inappropriate books that you don't have to have any sort of political allegiance to one side or the other to look at that and say, okay, well, if that's a ban, then us not keeping Hustler in the school library is a ban too.
And if people wanted to introduce heterosexual pornography into the school libraries, everyone without question would be against that. Everybody from the left and the right. But since this has to do with homosexuality and things of that nature, well, all of a sudden, it's all of a sudden okay for some reason. It doesn't make any sense. And like this panel says, like Megyn Kelly says, you do not have to be an expert to know that. It is just common sense, and it is just common decency. But what do you think, guys? Do you think that it's okay to have these books in schools? Or do you think that everyone with common sense is correct and that, probably shouldn't be in school libraries? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Give the video a like. Please subscribe to my channel. You will be helping me out a lot. And I'll see you guys later.